Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
We thank the Most High Yahuah and His precious Son, Yahusha, Mashiyach, for allowing us to come out today, and we just count it as a honor and a privilege to be able to behold your faces once again on another set apart Shabbat, and yet be in the land amongst the living. And we thank the Most High for all of these things. And at this time, we're going to go ahead and start with our service, and we're going to open up with the blowing of the shofar by our Zazakan, Gabar Yahuah. He's going to blow the shofar for us, and immediately afterwards, we're going to have Aki Shlomo. He's going to come up and pray for us. He's going to come up and pray for us, and then we will go into our lesson. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
And everybody turn and face towards Jerusalem. That'll be facing towards the east.
Dear Yahuah, I come before your throne and just thank you again for another set apart Shabbat. Pray that you open our hearts, minds, and our ears so that we may think, feel, and reflect on the words that you give Maury today, and be able to understand the sermon that he's presenting us today. Thank you for letting us be able to make it here today without any problems, and just be able to fully be immersed in your presence. In your set apart Son's name, hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Shabbat shalom once again, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Hallelujah. So we're going to go ahead and get into our study today, and so as I can, Gabar Yahuah will be our reader. And today, I decided to go into some things. For about the last few weeks or so, our messages have been catered towards Israel, and it's going to be catered towards Israel today. But I'm going to go into some scriptures, and because we, as Israelites, and being the true descendants of Yahuah, a lot of times when our messages are delivered, it makes it seem like that we are separatists or biased, and or what's some other words I can use? Or we don't consider others. It seems like we leave others out. But today, the title of our lesson is a fundamental approach to understanding the Hebrew Scriptures. And the reason I'm doing this is because most people, because of the religious institutions, they picked up the Bible and just gone with ideologies and philosophies that were handed down to them, and they never had an understanding of what they possess or hold in their hand when they pick up the Bible. And I like to often remind people that before it was called the Bible, remember, I always remind them, say, you know, during the time of the disciples, I said during the time of Mashiyach, Yahusha, our Redeemer, there was no such thing as a Bible. they had scrolls. And so when we approach what we call the Bible today, it's imperative that you have an understanding of what you have in your possession when you pick it up. And you have to know how to read it. And the only way you can gain the correct understanding and get the knowledge that you need from it, you have to understand how it's laid out. And so with that being said, we're going to look at a few things. And I'll probably do this lesson over the next 2 to 3 weeks. And let's go look at something first. Now, one point I want to first start off with is one common mistake that most people make when they pick up the Bible is when they start in Genesis, they automatically think that that's Yahuah, the Father, or what they would call in secular religions, or they call God. They automatically think that that's Him doing the talking. It's Him doing the creating. And once you start that and you take that approach, it's going to trip you up moving forward. You have to understand what this book is about. And we're going to ask our Zarzakan, Gabar Yahuah, if he would, get John 1 and 3. And then we're going to go over to Colossians, the first chapter, verse 15 to 16. So, John or Yahuah 1, and then after that, we'll go to Colossians, the first chapter.
Yahuah or John 1 verse 3. All these things were made by Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made.
Okay, now let's start at the first verse. But y'all heard that all these things were made by Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made. Let's see, who is the Him?
Yahuah or John 1 verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim.
Okay, in the beginning was what?
Word.
The Word. Who's the Word? Is Yahuah the Word or His Son the Word?
His Son.
His Son. And His Son or the Word was what? With Him. And His Son was a what?
Was Him.
We don't have a name.
Okay, so we know Elohim is plural. Right? We do know that, right? So, in Hebrew, whenever you see "im" on the end of a word, it means plural, more than one. Just like when we say Shalom Ah. I'm talking to a specific brother. If I say Shalom Akim, that means I'm talking to all of the brethren. And like a Koti, I might say Shalom Akoti, I'm speaking to one specific sister. If I say Shalom Akotin, I'm talking to all of the sisters. So it's "im" for masculine men, or for female is "in." But we're going to get into that anyway, because we're going to start our Hebrew lessons today anyway, after. Okay, now let's get Colossians, the first chapter, verse 15 and 16.
Colossians 1 verse 15. Who is the image of the invisible Elohim, the firstborn of every creature? For by Him were all things created, that are in Shamayim or heaven, and that are in Azareth or earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by Him and for Him.
All things were created what? By Him and for Him. Now, the reason we have have to take this approach starting out because when you go to Genesis, matter of fact, let's go to Bereshit 1 and 1.
Bereshit, or Genesis 1, verse 1. In the beginning, Elohim created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of Elohim moved upon the face of the waters. And Elohim said, let there be light. And there was light.
Okay, stop right there. So, this is where people make a grave mistake right here. Does Yahuah have to move for anything?
No.
He never moves. He only wills. And the purpose of the Mashiyach is whatever Yahuah wills, Mashiyach or his son speaks into existence. This is very important for us to understand because you know why? Because when most people, mainly a lot of Christians and different ones that come through the religious institutions, what happens is when you separate and you say, okay, in Genesis, or what they would call the Old Testament, they will say in their vernacular, like they refer to it as God. They say God created. Then that causes a problem because from that approach now, by the time you get to what we call the Messianic teachings of the New Testament, what have they automatically done? They divided the book into two dispensations and two works. They said the Old Testament was about who? God, or the Father, as they call him. And the New Testament is about who? His Son. But if you take that approach, you can never adequately understand the Scriptures. And so this is why we want to take a fundamental approach and clear some things up for our listening audience and our viewing audience. So when you hear our messages that might say the kingdom of heaven was for Israel, we have a reason for saying it. When we say that Yahuah said, I'm the Elohim of Israel and none else, we have a reason for saying that. When we take that Mashiyach, Yahusha, didn't come to die for the world, he came to die for Israel, we have a reason for saying that. Why are we saying these things? And that's why I'm taking this approach to do this lesson. Okay, let's go over to Psalms. Tehillim, the 33rd division, or some people say chapter, but they're broken down by division, and it's starting at the 6th verse.
Tehillim, or Psalms 33, verse 6. By the word of Yahuah were the heavens made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth. He gathereth the waters of the sea together as in heap. He layeth up the depth in storehouses. Let all the earth fear Yahuah. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. For he spake, and it was done. He commanded, and it stood fast.
Hallelujah. Thank you, Aki. Now, when we read it, that 6th verse, what it said, by the word of Yahuah were the heavens made. So somebody might say, but didn't you just say that Yahusha, the Son, he did the creation and made everything? Okay, then let's go over to John 1 and 14 and find out who this word of Yahuah is.
Yahuah, or John 1, verse 14. And the word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and he beheld his esteem, the esteem as of the begotten of Yahuah, full of grace and truth.
Hallelujah. So who is his word?
Yahusha.
It's Yahusha. It's still his son. Whatever Yahuah wills, the Son brings about by speaking into what? existed. So that was John 1:14. And the first verse we read from Psalms before then was Psalms 33, verses 6, 7, 8, and 9. So, when we see this, we now see that when we approach the book, what you're reading and what you're hearing is what? Is the Son. That's very important. Why am I focusing so much on the Son? Are we overlooking the Father?
No.
No. But the book and the speaker is about the Son. Now let's go over, let's read something. Let's read Galatians 3 and 16.
Galatians 3, verse 16. Now to Abraham, his seed, were the promises made. He saith not, and to seeds as of many, but as of one, and to thy seed, which is Mashiyach.
Now let's read verse 29 in that same chapter.
Galatians 3, verse 29. And if you be Mashiyach, then are you Abraham's seed, and heirs according to the promise.
Okay, it said, and if you be Mashiyach, then are you what? Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. Very important. Reading for Galatians. Then Galatians 16 said, now to Abraham and his seed were the what? Promises made. Between me and you and your seed after you in their generation for what? An everlasting covenant. To be a what? Elohim unto you and to your seed after. Now remember, we read that from Galatians 3 and 16 and Galatians 3 and 29. Now, let's go to Genesis 17 and 7.
Bereshit, or Genesis 17, verse 7. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your seed after you and their generations for an everlasting covenant to be an Elohim unto you and to your seed after you.
Read that one more time.
Genesis 17, verse 7. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your seed after you and their generations for an everlasting covenant to be an Elohim unto you and to your seed after you.
Okay, so who is he speaking to right here? He's speaking to Abraham. Okay then. So who would Abraham's seed be? It would be Isaac. Then it go from Isaac's seed to who? To Jacob. From Jacob to who? His 12 sons would become the 12 tribes of Israel. That seed line doesn't go any further than that. It goes from Abraham to Isaac, from Isaac to Jacob, and Jacob's offspring, which became the nation of Israel, or the 12 tribes. So, when we see this, this helps us to keep everything in perspective. And this is why, as a body of believers, or those who want to attach to Israel, they have to have this understanding and know and stay within the scripture. Not go and run off with some kind of ideology or philosophy in your mind that will pass down to you. The scriptures are specific in whom it speaks of and to. Okay, and let's go over to let's go to Bereshit, the 15th chapter. And let's find out what they inherited as heirs, because all of this is so important. We're going to go to Bereshit, or Genesis, the 15th chapter, and the 17th verse, and go to the 18th verse.
Bereshit, or Genesis 15, verse 17. And it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. And the same day Yahuah made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto you and to your seed have I given this land, from the river of Mizraim, or Egypt, unto the great river, the river Euphrates.
Okay, then, so who did he make this covenant with? He made it with Abraham and said, what? Until what? Your seed have I what? Given this land. His seed were heirs who inherited what? The land of Yashra'al. You know how this book is keeping a common theme? It's dealing with Yahusha, a covenant made with Abraham, then Abraham's offspring, and a land or inheritance that was given to who? Abraham's heirs. So when we look at Abraham's heirs, who this land was given to, it gets more specific because it tells you what people or what a group inherited this land as heirs and for an inheritance. What group of people or what body of people inherited a land called Jerusalem? Or what we would call today Israel? It would be the 12 tribes. That keeps us within the book, because if you go outside of what we're saying now, you're going to be all over the place when it comes to understanding the whole layout of the book. So, when we speak of a covenant, we often, as new believers and stuff, if you're outside of this teaching, you don't understand what kind of covenant this is. Automatically, when I say heirs, what's the first thing that should come to your mind? Say it again, Coach.
Children.
Children. And most times when you speak of those children, they're what? Your what? Offspring. So this covenant, how do you get an offspring? Say it again, somebody. Y'all said the word I want to hear. By marriage. So when you look at this book and you start reading about Abraham and a covenant being passed down to Israel, we're speaking of a marriage. You're speaking of a marriage. But who was this marriage between? Because remember, you had something started out with Abraham and it ended with who? The 12 tribes. Y'all know how it goes to Abraham to Isaac, then to Jacob, and then once it gets to his 12 tribes, or Jacob's offspring, it doesn't go any further than that. Because the 12 tribes are the offspring of this marriage. They are the heirs. Israel, or the nation, is the bride, or the wife. The children or the fruit thereof are the 12 tribes, the offspring. So the rightful children are the ones who what?